Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the rooms tonight and being part of this discussion panel. We were extremely pleased to be even a small part of the promotional awareness video that you made. So we're really excited to see that a little bit later tonight. And thank you again to Renee Fairhealy, who is here as host for our panel discussion tonight. And I'm really looking forward to hearing all of your stories. So Renee, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for this incredible opportunity that you and your team has provided to us and to our community. We're so grateful. Just as a little introduction for myself with my own background, I am a CODA and I'm a member of this beautiful deaf community. I work as a psychologist with our wellness program, and it's a gift of a role, really, in witnessing the beauty and strength of our community. It's important to note that a lot of mental health challenges do occur with our community at a much higher rate than that of hearing populations, but not as a result of their deafness, as a result of the incredible barriers and the life stressors and uncertainties that are a part of their daily lives. So playing witness to this and playing witness to these experiences was truly the inspiration behind the awareness campaign and behind the video. And I felt it was something that it needed to be done. It was time. It was time that we were heard, that the community was heard. So you'll see a beautiful, visionary, groundbreaking video at the end of our session this evening. And I'm glad that Angela is making her way back down, because I did want to say a few words. So I just wanted to begin this evening by just taking a moment to share our most sincere condolences and gratitude for the late Larry Dowie. So I just want to share for a moment our connection with Mr. Dowie, with our presence here tonight. So as planning was taking place for our video and our awareness campaign, it was important that our story represent us in every way. And I felt that the Rooms was such an iconic and special place for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and I just knew that the Rooms needed to be the site of our flash mob, which is now called our Deaf Choir. So I reached out to staff and I requested that they consider my request, and it was not long after that Larry had emailed back, and I was just elated. So him and his full team were just so incredibly supportive. We required special arrangements for many of the parts that they played in our event. And when we arrived for filming early on July 31st at 8 o'clock in the morning on a bright sunny morning, it was Larry who greeted us at the door. And his warm and friendly nature and his genuine interest in our story quickly put my jitters to rest. As we performed in the atrium, I could see Larry with his arms folded in his linen blazer, standing alongside Angela. His gaze and his smile communicated a quiet confidence and a belief in our message. This was later confirmed as we finished our set. We brought Larry over to meet the rest of the group, so thrilled with our production. And he said just before we parted, he said, you know, Angela and I were just talking, and we think we can make space for you at the Rooms to show your video and to share it. I was just thrilled. So just 10 minutes off the steps of the Rooms that afternoon, we were officially offered a space in this lecture series. So what I felt this conveyed to our participants and to our deaf community was that you matter. Your message matters. So what Larry conveyed from the very start of this project, though not overtly, was your message needs to be heard, and we're going to help you with that. This support sparked a confidence that was so needed at the very start of our project. And here we are, 3 weeks from our launch, a launch that I'm now calling a movement. We've had over 5,000 views on YouTube, including international attention, and over 10 requests for performances and lectures. So we want to share this gift in memory of Larry Dowie, and we're hoping that the staff and those who see it will remember the gift of his kindness and the profound impact that he had on our story to empowerment and enhanced rights, and that Larry made space for us, and will forever be grateful. This says the Rooms.
Oh, wow. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you to the Rooms. Thank you to Larry. So, we're going to get moving right along, and I'm going to ask that the panelists introduce themselves. Spend just a couple moments sharing a little bit about their background. They're part of our incredible deaf community. Some of them are board members, some of them are staff. They were all our warriors in our awareness campaign, so I'll let each of them take a moment to introduce themselves.
Yes.
Yes, we are warriors. You want to go first? Oh, Tammy, go first.
Hello, my name is Tammy Vaders, and I'm from Newfoundland. I moved here, actually from Ontario, and I'm a student support assistant in a mainstream school. Hello there, my name is Paula Knight. I'm from Newfoundland, and I graduated from Gallaudet University. I also work as a student assistant in a mainstream school system. Hello, my name is Miles Murphy. I'm the Executive Director of NLAD, Newfoundland and Labrador Association of the Deaf. Hello, my name is Jennifer Viders, and I'm from New Hampshire, USA. I moved here in 1998, and I've been involved in the deaf community, and I'm the president of NLAD. Hello, my name is Jennifer Rimmer. And don't confuse the two Jennifers, of course. Jennifer V and Jennifer R, so just to clarify, of course. I grew up in a small town just outside of St. John's, and I've been here ever since. Newfoundlander, born and bred, and I've been working in many different jobs. Contract worker currently with Canadian BRS Video Relay Services. I have 2 children, and I'm very involved with the deaf community as well, and the promotion of our rights.
Thank you to our panel and all the wisdom you're going to share with us tonight. So maybe we'll get started with our first question. And the question is, if you could share with us what you think might be really helpful information around your upbringing, your childhood as a deaf individual, and maybe your life experiences as well.
Oh, I guess I'm supposed to start. I'm the oldest here, so the panel's all again. I want to share with you a few experiences. I was born deaf. 2 hearing parents, and my parents found out that I was deaf at the age of 4, so it wasn't until 4, and then, I didn't speak, I was very quiet, so my parents decided to give me, a test, kind of like, beating the drum, and of course they knew behind me that I wasn't looking, so they were shocked that I was deaf. They were unaware at that point. So I went to get a hearing test. They brought me, checked my hearing, of course, confirmed I was deaf. And again, scrambled, not sure what to do, how to communicate at the age of 4. My parents were a little bit worried. There was no school for the deaf here in Newfoundland, so they found one in Montreal, which means at that time it was a 3-day train trip, ferry ride, of course. So I had to go to the CN building. Of course, many children, CN Rail, many children were there. I remember seeing other deaf children when I arrived at the school, all the signing. I had no idea what was going on. So, of course, I cried. It was a hard time, leaving family at such a young age. So I went to Montreal, like I said, on the train, ferry, 3 days of travel. I arrived at the school. Started school and started learning. It was oral communication, because sign language at that point wasn't allowed in the classroom. I learned sign language from other students. The teachers actually weren't signing. So I picked up a few signs from other children. at recess, at lunch, afternoons, after school. So I was there for 5 years, September to June. I never went to go home Christmas time for that entire duration of the school year. Easter time, I would stay also at the school with all the other children. I wouldn't go home. Of course, we had a 2-month break for summer, but just back to the schooling and stuff, I mean, they really forced oral communication. They teach us to, learn how to speak. I thought I was doing really good. They were congratulating me. I thought I was learning how to speak really well. So I remember I went home at June, again, back onto the train, and I got home with my parents. I was really proud of myself. I thought I could speak really well. And my parents kept saying, what? What are you saying? And I just had a lack of confidence. It was just, I realized that my schooling really wasn't working. My signing was great, but my speaking wasn't. But I didn't know it until I tried to speak to my parents. So during the summer, my mother, of course, was a school teacher and an English teacher at that. And my grammar, my English, of course, is my second language, being sign language my first. I remember, I could sign the sentences, but when I tried to write them, and so I tried to write them, and then of course, I became a bilingual, trying to learn both at the same time. I remember my mother being extremely strict in terms of my writing and the messiness of it, and she would of course slap me on the head saying, that's not proper writing, you must have the proper sentence structure. So I learned to study even during the summer. So I went back to school. To Nova Scotia for 4 years, school for the deaf there, stayed there for 3 years, graduated, went on to Gallaudet. I did,
It was the only liberal arts.
it was the only liberal arts university for the deaf at the time at Gallaudet University. So I was kind of, grounded here in my roots in terms of being a Newfoundlander. So I came back here. And there was a bunch of different services, interpreting services, there was community supports, psychologists, and we had multiple services here at NLAD, as I just described. And so now I am the executive director of NLAD, providing all these services here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Thank you, Miles. Anybody else from the panel want to add, Tammy? Do you want to?
I will go ahead. I was born hearing, not deaf. I became deaf at the age of 4. My parents weren't sure what to do. I went to a regular school system and was integrated and mainstreamed in the school system. For the first 2 years, it was awful. I could not communicate with anybody. I had access to nothing. My parents would be very frustrated with me because when I was waiting for the bus every day, I would always be missing school and missing the school bus, and my mom was trying to figure out why, and finally got my cousin to come pick me up and go to school because I was missing the bus. And because I wasn't happy at school, I was very frustrated, I was lost, I didn't know how to communicate with anybody. It was a huge struggle for 2 years. So and then my parents decided to move me to a deaf school. I think I was 7 or 8. And I met deaf people for the first time. It was a new experience. It was, but I felt comfortable. I felt connected. I felt like I could communicate with them, even though I had to learn the language. And as the time went on, when I look back, I went later, always with my friends. There was no interpreters at the time, and I was always going to the hospital with my friends and interpreting. I was always calling people for interpreting for my friends. And almost what we call DIing. I was a deaf interpreter for them, like if they had a boyfriend or whatever that was hearing, and they didn't want the staff to be hearing their conversations, and I would call for them all the time so that the conversations could be private. So that was always my passion, to help and support the deaf community in every way I could. When I graduated, I went to Rochester Institute of Technology in the States. Two of us were actually the first to go there from here. I went and did an accounting degree. I wasn't happy in the job after I graduated, And people were asking me to become a DI, a deaf interpreter for the community. So I moved to Colorado and I did some DI training there, became a deaf interpreter, learned linguistics and all the other things that had to go. I really loved it. I love language, I love the education, I love the work. And I worked with domestic violence in the community. I am a networking specialist in education, so that I would go to the hospitals and the police stations and teach people how to communicate with the deaf community, how to use an interpreter, how to break down some barriers in communication. Then I moved to Ontario and I got a job in a preschool, as a preschool teacher, working with young kids who were deaf and who were CODAs, whose parents were deaf. The children were amazing, how fast they could pick up the language, and I realized that this is how it's supposed to work. To have the curriculum and everything match the deaf students. And I went to, then I became an intervener for the deaf blind. I did that for 9 years. And then my family is from here, I'm from Newfoundland, so I moved back to Newfoundland, and I'm working now in the mainstream school system and as a student assistant. And my hope is that we become the best education for the deaf. It's my passion, is to educate young deaf children and become successful. And as a community, we have to we value our family, we value our culture, we value our language, and I think that's what my passion is.
Thank you, Tammy. I think it's one of our biggest challenges tonight to keep us all on time, because you all have so much to share that's also valuable. So we'll move on to our second point, second question, which is sharing with us what barriers look like for the deaf community.
Just checking, that's my question. Just to speak briefly, there's many barriers we face on a daily basis when it comes to linguistic, communication, and accessibility. Mental health is one of the top issues and priorities within the deaf community because of the barriers they face with communication on a daily basis. The information is within the environment is not comprehended on a daily life and life learning skills. You have to understand, of course, that deaf people are, twice as likely to experience mental health issues due to the lack of accessibility to services here in Newfoundland and Labrador. There is for example, a warm line that is set up for mental health crisis situations, of course, but is not accessible to deaf individuals. So that's just one example of a barrier locally here. Our first language is American Sign Language, but people think that, that using broken English on a piece of paper for communication is a good way of using communication, but it's actually worse because there's so many more misunderstandings, and we need to get, more of a partnership within our community to make sure that is understood, that pen and paper is not always the way to go. As well as one psychologist, that NLED is not enough to service the deaf community for mental health concerns. There is a high concern within children from birth to age 5, since their language acquisition is delayed or their language is deprived because they're not exposed. The deaf children, parents usually are hearing, and then of course it's within the culture that they get the ASL, and that they understand and get that acquired language within the families. We noticed as well that deaf children that use sign language in their home have less mental health illnesses as well. I have so many things I want to talk about, but I want to go in depth, but I know that we don't have the time, and we got to, and there's so many topics that I want to cover, so I'm just doing as many as I can briefly. But we are the same as everybody else. There's no difference. Some people are concerned or label us with a disability, but I mean, I do everything. I live, I breathe, I think, I dream. I have the rights. I do everything you can. I have my ups and downs. I communicate. I'm active in the community, and I want a partnership with everybody else. And that's the barrier that I want everybody to realize, that we are the same. Oh, one more point. I want to add. Sorry, I'm not done. Mental health, is very a layered issue with domestic violence as well. My passion is domestic violence. I'm domestic violence. I'm a survivor, and I notice it within the community that the crisis line. The support services, it's a big city with a lot of services, but provincially, it's locally set up in the Avalon, and that, the mental health crisis is a huge issue, and that we need to focus on the entire community, domestic violence and mental health for both deaf and hearing individuals.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And one last point, the interviewer addition there, that my goal is to have a national domestic violence for a service for all of deaf Canada. So the interpreters here are great in terms of getting services, but sometimes there's no interpreter available. There's not enough. I need a meeting, I have to postpone my meeting just to get it because the interpreter availability is not available. So I mean, I have to depend sometimes on my parents, because if it's an emergency or a crisis and an interpreter is not available, and we delay because of the situation, well then it could make it even more critical. So again, the key to my to success and to reduce barriers is accessibility. I'm going to stop there, and I think that's everything for tonight.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think that that's a hard topic to summarize when we're talking about barriers, because it's so multi-layered, and there are so many that are insidious and hidden, which are even barriers of attitude, which we've often talked about at NLAD and within our community. That's more of a hidden one, and in fact, the most problematic one. So thank you. Thank you. You did a great job trying to summarize a really complex question. You got the top one. So the third question that I'm going to ask our panel to speak to is, how has technology influenced our life in the deaf community?
Ages ago, there was no TTY, and there used to be a big machine that we would have a loud machine that we would have, teletype machine that we would have to type on to communicate with, and it became small TTY, and now it's a cell phone, and that is so much easier to carry around, more portable. Now we have a relay service. We used to have a relay service in Ontario that would go through the TTY, and that now it's changed to VRS. Before 1980, the deaf community depended totally on our family members and our friends to interpret for us, whether it was a doctor's appointment, going to the hospital, well, everything I can think of. After 1980, we had trained interpreters finally in our community to provide interpretation for us, and it has been that way ever since. Today, we have baby alarms for whenever a baby cries, it like goes off, for doorbells, an alarm. What else? Bed, an alarm, yes, an alarm, a clock alarm to wake us up in the morning. We have fire alarms that are all connected to lights to wake us up and to alert us. We use texting, social media, and video chat. But understand today, there's still no access for radio. We can't hear what's going on the radio. So we would like to see more access to just general information for a radio line, so that there'd be access to everything going on the radio. This summer in July, I think it was, the federal government finally passed Bill C-81, which was Canada Access Act. It's for LSQ, ASL, and Indigenous languages, right? Yes. Sign Indigenous languages, and finally recognized the sign languages of our country, and hopefully that will benefit us up in the future, and there will be more. And to VRS, as Jennifer said, the processes that have been going on, now what we're getting is ASL and LSQ, which is LSQ is the French Sign Language, and we have VRS, the Video Relay Service, in Canada, which means that we finally have an app that we use on our phone that we can sign into with an interpreter on the screen to call anywhere we want. Almost like a TTY, except that it will, instead of being in English, which is the TTY, it would be in ASL because it's an actual interpreter on the screen. So it's smoother, it's more efficient, it's quick. Where the TTY was actually an English-based system. So now we actually have both LSQ and ASL in a video system in VRS. It is a huge advance. Now we can call anywhere in Canada. Each deaf person has their own VRS number, and you can give your VRS number to somebody else and they can call the deaf person through the relay system as well, because the video relay interpreter will sign straight to me to whoever's talking and wants to talk to me over the phone. So there's more awareness. It's only been set up for 3 years, and the hearing community is starting to become more aware of the system and able to use it. So there are several tools to help us communicate with the wider world. VRS is also amazing because it's available 24/7. It has a wireless Wi-Fi in your phone. You can call the police if you need. There's direct contact to the 911 services, and that's free. And often with the TTY, because of the English being second language, there would be many misunderstandings. But now, in 2014, after many years of the deaf community in Canada fighting for this and advocating for it, we finally have our VRS system, which is a huge benefit and improvement to our lives.
Thank you for sharing around technology. Certainly some great movements that have made a significant difference in independence and life choices. And I guess as a hearing individual, I find it interesting to note the difference in the role of social media, because I find it to be most times a really incredibly positive piece for the deaf community, being able to connect with one another and feel less isolated. Whereas for the hearing community, I find that it makes us less healthy at times, that we have an over-reliance on that. So as a hearing individual, being so connected to the deaf world, I see that you're using it in a way that it should be used, I guess. So we'll move on to our last question, and then we'll take questions from our guests here in the audience. So our last question is, what would you like for hearing communities and hearing individuals to understand about your community?
Everyone's looking at me, so I just want hearing people just to know that we're the same, we're equal, we want the same accessibility, we want the same, we have a language. English is not our first language, ASL is. And just like hearing individuals, everyone has their unique styles, their own experiences, their own backgrounds. Our language has rules, it has a structure, grammar, linguistics. It has its own, it's separate. It's not English. I can give an example, perhaps. I am going to the store, finger spelled, as you just saw, and me signing it is store, me go. And you can see how I'm finger spelling versus signing. So the movement and the structure is reversed in some places. So it's hard to explain. And we are the same. Does anybody want to add? Sometimes, when we're communicating with hearing individuals, they, I'm hard of hearing, or if you're deaf, doesn't matter, they start screaming and over enunciating. No, you don't need to get louder. We can't hear. It's not going to help. Just speak normal. Some people are afraid in terms of getting our attention, or how do you approach somebody? There's a fear there somehow. Also adding on here, like in a restaurant or in a store, I'll just say, I'll say I'm deaf, and they go, oh, I'm so sorry. That's totally annoying. But we're the same. I'm human. I'm deaf, no big deal. Also, if I meet someone and we're chatting and I'll tell them I'm deaf, they're like, oh, and they'll turn around and walk away. I'm like, no, I want to engage with you. We can work together, we can work this out, but don't even get the chance. They turn around and go on. It's we can write, we can try something, we can gesture, we can communicate. There's different avenues to communicate. Related to attitude and behaviors, I notice that hearing individuals quickly judge. Deaf people are want to figure out how to communicate. Hearing individuals seem to make quick assumptions that we can understand maybe lip reading, but it's not true. It's best to figure out what would you prefer, lip reading or writing a note. Each deaf individual prefers different ways. Some like, some don't like, some prefer gestures, some prefer writing. It's possible to figure out whatever way every individual wants to communicate. For example, if I were to go into the hospital and I needed some blood work, the lineup is quite large. I'm lucky because I go up and I'm deaf and I get special needs. I'm special needs, so I can take advantage of my special need and get in front of the blood work line. But it's funny if when the clerks try to talk to me, I feel like it's a little bit insulting, and I'm like, no, it's okay. They'll just point to the room. You go in there. I get bumped in the front line, but I don't mind sitting, waiting my turn, and but the other problem is they come out, in some waiting rooms, they'll go, Mr. Murphy, where is Mr. Murphy here today? And then I recognize that they're saying, oh, they're saying Miles Murphy, but it's still on an everyday basis in today's world. You think that this continuous action would be fixed by now, but it happens on an everyday basis.
And again, when it comes to newspaper and radio, the attitude is so slow to change. Hearing impaired, for example, is one term I cannot stand. It's a medical term and it's judgmental to me. My life is not around my ears. It's not about my hearing, and my whole life is not about the fact that I'm impaired in my hearing. I'm not broken. I'm fine. I have a normal life every day. I don't need to be fixed. And everybody has their own identity and everybody's different. But that word makes me feel broken. I think that's it. I think the important thing is mutual respect. That's the word I think we need to focus on, mutual respect. we need to be working together. We need to be trying to get rid of these communication barriers, and we are willing to try, as long as you are willing to try with us. And we're willing to listen, or always willing to listen.
So we often hear references of how important it is for the hearing community to understand our language and culture. So would someone like to share on the culture piece? On why that's important to us, to the deaf community, deaf culture?
Well, again, it's about communication. We're comfortable in our language. We share the same language. We share the same background growing up in schools for the deaf, the same culture. We share the same norms and values and traditions, the shared experiences. Even in BC School for the Deaf and the Newfoundland School for the Deaf, if two people from those schools meet, the connection is automatic because the experiences are shared, and that's the part of the culture.
So I'm at liberty of knowing so much in-depth detail about each of these lovely individuals, but I know that I often do hear from many deaf individuals that when you're at Gallaudet or when you're at a national conference and you're surrounded by deaf individuals, I hear you often remark, many of you, all of you in fact, I'm sure at some point say that you feel like you're home. So I think that that's an important concept for our hearing community to understand as well, that that's when you feel most at home.
Yes, and I would like to add to that one comment. When it comes to deaf culture, I went 2 years to a regular school system in Main when I was a teenager. There's other reasons that I decided to stay home with my parents at that time. I lived in the Bay. I was the only deaf person in my community. There was no interpreter around, nobody signed. And I was doing a lot of lip reading. And in school, I was always staring at the teacher. I had no time for friends. I had so much homework to try to keep up. But I missed my language and I missed my culture. I missed that understanding and connection. I was crying every day that I went to the hearing school pretty much. My mom was my best friend, which is not normal for the teenager to have my mom as my best friend. So then my parents decided to put me back into the school, and that's how I felt better. Like I say, that home, I was back home. That was my culture, that was my place, that was where I needed to be. That's where my identity was. That's where I found my deafness. That's where my friends was. That's where my community was. And until I stayed until I graduated and decided to go to university at Memorial. Actually, I was actually the first deaf person to graduate with an interpreter all the way through university. When I grew up, I went to school for the deaf, and I stayed at home. I was a day student. After school was finished, I never went home. I stayed at the school all evening because of the socialization I could get from my friends, the same language. That was my home, even though I lived close. And then I would call my mom and dad to pick me up every night. Right? Right, Debbie? Right, Debbie? That's what happened every single night. My sister.
Excellent. And maybe if someone wants to share as a lead into our video, we didn't practice this question. This is just one that I'm going to throw in there for fun. You'll spot me later. That's okay. So would someone like to share? I'm getting the glares. Would someone like to share what, just a brief introduction as to why this video was important to us, why our awareness campaign was so important to our community?
I can answer, but I prefer somebody else to take the lead on this. Really just exposure to get people to understand deaf culture, the importance of, the deaf community and deaf awareness. This video is for them. And really, well, saying there is no difference, right? But it's about deaf awareness, deaf culture. It seems like a small group, but we need to be well known, and you need to be aware.
Mm-hmm. So maybe.
Okay, we'll wait and see.
So maybe what we'll do is we'll take some questions, if there's any questions from our guests here in the audience. Any questions? I think we're really
No questions?
at the portion of people. Okay,
Thanks. I'll ask a question. Do you guys feel that the hearing society or the hearing community is starting to accept the deaf individuals more now than they did in the past? Do you see any kind of change at all, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
Yes, we do notice an improvement, but there's still a long ways to go. More open, getting more open, more, expressive, and just generally, yes, becoming more acceptable and accessed. Since Bill C-81, I know that will help in the upcoming future. Some policy changes. We'll take it away over here. Also, we notice that people are starting to, first they say, oh, I don't know sign language, but now I'm starting to find that people, especially in mainstream schools, have a bit of a knowledge or have met somebody, or, they're asking more questions. Recently, I started with the deaf awareness, I work with hearing children, and I just throw out a few signs, and now I'm noticing, like after a year or so, they're starting to sign a little bit, and they're asking more questions to me, and the staff as well are starting to ask questions, becoming more curious. In the past, that never really happened, so there is a change. Bill C-81, in terms of the federal announcement and the legislation around the linguistics and the language, there will become more awareness, not only just the deaf community, but also the Indigenous language, ISL, and the French Sign Language, and as well as French language in general. So it will be coincide of the two languages, and accessibility and the awareness will continually improve and be known.
Change on the federal level will have to affect the change.
People are becoming more open-minded, and that change from federal, top down, to the provincial will change attitudes and become more positive, and the awareness will continue to improve as people start to learn everyday life is the same. More and more hearing people are taking sign language classes as well. I've noticed the enrollment is really, the interest has grown substantially. I know that in terms of the community on the internet, police, the hospitals, and how to communicate with deaf individuals or hard of hearing individuals, it would be nice, for us to teach all these institutions or locations how to just interact with deaf people. We need to encourage ourselves within our community to get experts on education to match the need that's going to be growing. I know that we're involved, and there's our organization, but it's a part of our life. It's how to accommodate and partner within the community so that we can work together with attitudes, with each other, continually having an open mind. Most important.
That was a great question. And so we have another one. And before we take the next question, just a comment to Jennifer. I think that was such an important point that you made, Jennifer, because with the building empowerment that I've seen in the community in the last number of years, I can really see that ownership of culture and language, and it's so important. It's so lovely to see. So, very important comment. Kathy?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Well done. Good presentation. I'm really interested in talking about the provincial legislation that will happen soon. and what we need to do as a community to make sure that we have ASL recognized in our provincial laws. So I'm really interested in learning about how, as a community of deaf and hearing people, we can work on that together, because that's not going to happen on its own. And I know that we have, you know, the Accessible Canada Act now, but as a community provincial group, we must work with the government in order to get that same recognition for the language in the provincial laws. And I think that we really need to start doing that now, because we're going to have the provincial accessible legislation. My guess would be 2021. So we really need to think about how can we do that so that ASL is recognized the same in our provincial legislation. It is extremely important that that happens. How can we do that?
That's a great point.
It needs to be they're about 3 to 5 years, right, after?
My guess is that it will be because it's the same minister. It's the same minister. So my guess is that it will be sooner than that.
Really important point. And I guess if I could just add to that, I know that when I've attended international conferences with the World Federation of the Deaf, it seems that those countries that are sort of leading the way with regards to rights and accessibility and inclusion and real trailblazers are those countries where the language has been recognized.
Absolutely. It's fundamental that we start with the language.
Absolutely. It's a great point, for sure. Any further comments or questions? Oh, sorry, Angela. Go ahead.
How big is the deaf community, not just here in St. John's, but across Newfoundland and Labrador? And does the NLAD have services all the way across the province?
That's a good question.
Yeah, we're trying to work all over Newfoundland and Labrador and do as much as we can to be involved with the other deaf communities across the province. We do have interpreters that fly to break down some barriers that have been.
As for numbers, I think maybe Miles might be able to answer from a numbers standpoint.
All across Newfoundland and Labrador, there's approximately 600 here locally within the Avalon, Eastern region, St. John's, Mount Pearl, you know. There's about 200 in the vicinity of we'll say, 250 within the vicinity here. And that's deaf who use sign language. We're not talking about hard of hearing, we're talking about deaf people who use ASL.
I don't know if it's permissible for the host to be able to add in a little bit of detail to that with regards to outreach across the province. Being a psychologist with the program, what's been great is the role of telehealth and telemedicine. So all of the health authorities have been very cooperative and helpful in us utilizing their telehealth services. So the smallest communities can make their way to a central health point to be able to use a telehealth station. Now it's not as ideal as in person when you're speaking of psychological assessments and mental health assessments with a visual language, and of course really getting a fine handle on the intricacies of what's happening. So it's not ideal, but it's certainly the next best thing, and it can help to triage and to move things to the next planning stage. Sometimes it's things that are very acute, and we have had 2 instances, in fact, where it was so complicated we actually flew to the community. There was one instance on the West Coast and one in Labrador. So if we can use telehealth and other types of technologies, we'll do so, but if we have to fly to actually be in person, we've done that as well. So that's a great question. So I think that brings us to near the end of our time this evening. I know that many in our audience have some familiarity with sign language, because I'm looking at the faces that are all familiar to me, because we have intended to teach a couple of signs. So maybe we could still do that. I'll just leave that to the panelists to see if somebody wants to share a sign with the audience. Like I said, I'm looking at the audience. I know that many of them know sign language, but that's all like.
Thank you. Finish. Thank you, Fish. Thank you. I just want to know. Welcome. How are you? How are you?
They're all taking turns.
Look at the revealer.
So, and maybe I'll add good night, if we could add that one in there. So in summary, I guess we want to thank people who came out to listen to us this evening, and thank everyone who's supported our project and our awareness campaign. So there's a lot of historical things happening in our community. It's really becoming a banner year for us, and we're really humbled. Thank you again, Angela, and to the rooms for all the support that you've given us and providing us with this opportunity tonight, along with other staff from the rooms who have reached out to us with other projects, such as art projects. And so it's just incredible, the trickle effect of how it keeps moving in that direction. So that's a really cherished partnership for us. So we're going to share our video in just a moment. And that video is in partnership with some outrageously kind and talented individuals. We have one of those kind and talented individuals in our audience this evening, Miss Leanne Ryan, who is our director of our deaf choir. We were first the flash mob, but now we've moved up to being a deaf choir. So we're so grateful for her. And the video was in partnership with the beautiful people at DC Design House and Upside Down Films. These individuals were such incredible souls, and once we began sharing what the project was, it was so incredibly touching to see how people were just jumping on board and supporting it. What can we do? What can we donate? What can we share? It was just so humbling. So I guess we'll leave you with a couple of requests. Because again, knowing who's in the audience, thank you for all the support you've given us so far. Many of you are family members and friends, our colleagues, and people connected to the community. So thank you for watching our video. Thank you for sharing our video. Thank you for being here this evening. As you know, there's a YouTube link on our website. Continue to share it. Let's see if we can get those 5,500 views moving up even further. So we'll end there, and we'll also end with a quote, and it's just a simple quote. It's a popular one, and it's "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And so part of that change is we're asking you to continue, many of you, to learn ASL, continue to make space for us and to hear us. Thank you. And thank you to our incredible panelists. You did a great job this evening.
Thank you.
Angela, if I get you to show the video. And Angela's asked us, the panelists, if we wouldn't mind taking a seat up there while the video plays. Good.